Good afternoon or good morning for some of you guys. Appreciate you jumping on here today to take a look at Foundation Pay and walk through our webinar on our corporate card and expense management solution, and also get a little preview of a newly released product for vendor payment. We're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to get in here. I still see the number tallying up. So just give us a moment and we will get started and take you through the demonstrations. See the number continuing to tick up. My name is Dylan Kilpatrick. We're going to be running this webinar here today to look at the Foundation Pay corporate card and expense management solution. We're just giving everybody another minute or so here to get joined in, and we will take you through the entire system. Just give us another minute before we get started. Okay, so we're going to get started. It looks like that number has started to slow down here. Again, appreciate everybody jumping on here today. Today's webinar is on Foundation Pay, Corporate Card and Expense Management Solution, as well as our newer product, Foundation Bill Pay for vendor payment services. My name is Dylan Kilpatrick. I work on the client sales team here. Just give everybody a little bit of background on myself, as I've been with Foundation since 2019. I've worked on our implementation team. I've worked on our support staff, and now I work on our client sales team, where I work with current clients to, go through new products, show off stuff, and see if there is anything out there in Foundation that can streamline processes or make life a lot easier. Oftentimes we find people get Foundation up and running, and they're kind of just zoned in on these, getting the accounting up and running, but they don't really look at some of the auxiliary stuff that we do have to offer, where we can, again, save a lot of time, streamline some processes. So Foundation Pay is one of those items. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into my screen here on Foundation Pay. To give you, again, a little bit of a high-level overview before we jump too far into it, Foundation Pay is a corporate card and expense management solution that also is now going to be having a vendor payment solution built into it as well. So I'm going to take you through the corporate card and the expense management side first, how it integrates with Foundation, how it functions, and then we'll be jumping into the vendor payment stuff after that. And last housekeeping note before we get into the full webinar is that we do record this webinar, and we will be sending that out after the call. So if you wanted to share that with anybody else, or if you did happen to get in here a minute early, we haven't really gotten too far into this, but we will be sending out the recording after the call, and we will be saving some time towards the end to go over any questions. So if you do have any questions, hold those to the end or throw them in the chat or questions bar, and I'll try to address as many of them as I can towards the end of our call. So Foundation Pay, my web screen, you can see it here. The first thing I kind of like to point out that, to utilize Foundation Pay, it's not something that you have to log into Foundation Accounting to get to Foundation Pay and kind of utilize the system. You can, set it up directly here on the web or on the app. And this is where your users will live. So users within Foundation Pay do not necessarily have to have a login to the accounting system. While the two systems do integrate, the users in Foundation Pay do not take up licenses, seats, or even have to know what Foundation Accounting is to utilize Foundation Pay. So again, it's a web system or an app. First thing kind of jumping into here is, again, it does integrate fully with your Foundation database. So we do sync data directly from Foundation and make it available here. So there's no duplicate maintenance entry. You just do your normal Foundation, processes, enter your jobs, your cost codes, your classes, set up budgets, put in GL codes if you have new GL codes, phases, divisions, vendors, so on and so forth. If you close a job or add a new job or turn something or change something, it will make those adjustments. It syncs out here daily, and it makes that available in Foundation Pay. Or if there's any reason that you would need to do a manual sync, you can come in here and manually sync that data over at any time. So that's going to be the pool of information out of Foundation to Foundation Pay. On the flip side, we do have an integration where we can push items back into Foundation, which is really nice as well. Circling back to the user setup, like I said, these users do not have to be set up within Foundation to access Foundation Pay. So admins may have access to both, but normal users will just have access to Foundation Pay, where they'll come in and enter their receipts or put in their coding or anything of that nature. So the first thing, or biggest thing here, to utilize our expense management system, I do like to point out pretty early on these, demonstrations or webinars, is you do need to issue our corporate, card. So you do need to issue the Foundation Pay MasterCard in the system. It's not a bring your own card scenario or anything of that nature. There's a handful of reasons that we do that. There are some solutions that bolt onto third-party card platforms that don't really integrate well with accounting systems, and they can help with receipt capture and coding, but then there's often a delay in getting that processing over from the credit card company. With our system, when we do swipe that card, it does pull over to Foundation in real time, or Foundation Pay, I should say, and it syncs that transaction within 30 seconds of the actual card being swiped. It also notifies the user that their card was used, and then it sends them a text receipt capture notification as well, which just streamlines and kickstarts the entire process. There's some other stuff that we can do in terms of backend data pooling that is really nice as well, which I'll show you here in a moment. So let's say we wanted to set Roger up with a card here, and we came in here. We can set him up with user-specific security and access. We can then go ahead and put in, a phone number, which will be used for those text receipt captures I was just, talking about. We put in an email address for notification and login purposes, and then we can simply hit order card. On here, when I scroll down to the very bottom, on a card by card or user by user basis, I can come into the system and set up a daily, weekly, biweekly, or biweekly, and also monthly spend limit, as well as set up card restrictions where I can say, hey, this is supposed to be a fuel card only, so it won't work anywhere besides fuel stations or pumps. Maybe it's a maintenance card where it's fuel plus like service or parts ordering or things of that nature, travel cards, building supply store cards, and you can mix and match these restrictions. These are not all of the restrictions we have in the system, but these are the most common ones that we see people use, so we make them readily available here. But like I said, if we needed some other restrictions, there are some other possibilities as well. Once that card is ordered, you then go and just give it to the user, employee, office staff, so project manager, foreman, whoever would be utilizing your current cards or you guys would be adding cards to. You'd get distribute those cards accordingly. And then the first thing that's going to happen is when they go out and use that card, they are going to get a notification to their device. And I'll pull up my mobile screen here. That looks like this. So within 30 seconds to a minute of the transaction happening, it is actually going to notify them, hey, there was a charge from this vendor at this location for this dollar amount. Can you please respond with an image of the receipt and a short description? This is automatically sent from the system to the user's device, allowing them for easy notification. Again, unless they're peeling, I always joke, unless someone's peeling out of the fuel station or running out of Home Depot when they make their purchase, or ABC Supply or something, they should get this notification while they're still there, and they should be able to easily capture that description and that receipt via text, not asking them to do too much, fairly straightforward. They submit it back into the system. And then from that text, we will pull the receipt image and also the description, and we will attach it to the actual transaction within Foundation Pay, queuing it up for further coding, as well as approval and import into Foundation. Now, if they don't do receipt capture, which we do find is the most common way people will put receipts into the system, they also can upload it in the app or on the web. So there are other receipt capture options. Again, we find this to be the most common because we think, and our data shows from when we've worked with new customers or new clients, that the quicker we can get a notification to the employee, the higher likelihood we have of getting that receipt into the system. Most people I talk to, I go, how often are you getting your receipts from your employees? And this goes from a range of people, but mostly people that are doing this stuff manually, if they're doing manual expense management, by paper, or maybe people are submitting receipts via text, or manually submitting them physically, or even emailing them into the an admin. They say, oh, we're lucky if we get 50 or 60%. We're trying to increase that number so that you guys have a higher compliance in case of audit, so you guys have proper documentation to back these expenses. Again, if they don't do receipt capture via text, we can come in here right to the Foundation Pay app. This can be added onto any Android, iOS, phone, tablet device. It's a progressive web app, and they can log directly into the application, and then they can go to the transaction that they're looking at. So on here, if I scroll to the bottom, you'll notice I have a couple of PDFs here, but just as an example of something that could be uploaded as a receipt. If we did text receipt capture, this is where they would show up. They would populate right to the receipt preview area, and just be available there as a part of the transaction. Now, if they didn't do receipt capture via text, it would show up here as a nothing, and they would be asked to capture the receipt directly in the app. So they can take a photo, they can choose from a photo in the photo library. If they get email or texted a receipt and they want to save that file and upload it either on the web and or the mobile application, they can do that. After that initial receipt capture has been done, either via by text or by app or on the web, we can come in here to the workflow section, and this can be coded by them. It could be coded by a project manager, an admin. Every company is a little bit different, but then we're going to want to use that foundation data to code that transaction accordingly. And then we can route it through an approval process where we can just double check and make sure that the coding looks good before it goes to foundation. And a couple of things I like to mention here about the workflow sections is that we can pull all of your chart of account and your GL information over, but that you only, or they will only see what you give them access to. And you can see I have a reduced list of expense codes here, and they're very mirrored to my account numbers. Hey, this is 5300 direct material expense. We can rename these expense codes to be more easy to select from like a field user or a project manager or foreman perspective. We can say, hey, instead of 5300 direct material expense, we don't really care if they know that. They don't need to know the number. We just want them to select the proper expense category. We're just going to call it job materials. So we can rename these to make them a little bit easier to select. My system just kind of mirrored off of your standard chart of account number. And this also uses foundation logic to populate what is needed for a specific transaction. So if someone chooses office rent or supplies and you give them access to an overhead account, the system is going to know that that overhead account should not be job costed based off of your setup and foundation. So it's not going to prompt them for a job. But if we select a direct material expense, or a direct expense in general, it will prompt for a project. Or if we choose an equipment related account, it may ask us for an equipment code or a service code on that piece of equipment. And then they can put in that equipment code and then even put in mileage and such. The project list will come from your active and open project list that, again, is synced out daily to stay up to date. Instead of someone scrolling through this entire list to see exactly what they're looking for, they can simply type out the name or number and dynamically search through those fields to get what they need. And then they can put in cost codes and classes. And this will only pull in budgeted cost codes or classes into the system, allowing for easier entry and just making sure that people aren't coding to things that shouldn't be on a particular job that they select. Other things that we can do here is my system does not have divisions or phases set up. So if your guys' database does have divisions or phases and you're saying, oh, wow, I don't see that stuff that I'll need, we could have those in there. Just note that my database doesn't have that item, which is why it doesn't show up here. You'll also see this little split transaction icon here, and this is if we need to, separate that out, into multiple geocodes, multiple jobs, et cetera, et cetera. We can break that down into multiple line items and allocate cost accordingly. You do also see the vendor field. It defaults as like an overhead vendor or a credit card vendor that we use. Vendrix there is the old branding of the cards. Now it's called Foundation Pay, but if you want to default the overhead, or I should say really a miscellaneous vendor, you can do that. Or we can choose from the vendor list as well. Just completely up to you as to what works best, for those items. Once the transaction has been through initial coding, it can then get routed through an approval process where we can set up custom approval rules. In my system, it's really basic. Hey, everything goes to me. Gets entered and it all goes to an admin. And I do see people set up their systems and just say, hey, we just want any transaction that goes through the system to hit an admin. That admin then verifies that everything looks good before they import, and that's completely fine. In some systems, I see it's a little bit more complex, where maybe it goes to like a project manager based off of the job, and then it goes to an admin, or depending on the type of transaction, it goes to like a controller, a CFO, or an admin, or something of some different scenarios as to how we can set up approval rules. So we can set up as many custom approval rules as you need. We can also do up to 4 layers of approvals. I say this in my demos and talk to people, I don't know if I've ever seen or heard of anybody needing 4 layers of approvals. Most of the time it's 1 or 2, but if you guys want to be the first ones to set those up, we'll do it with you. We can set up the 4 layers of approvals and have 4 people put their checkbox on it before it can be pushed to foundation. The approvals would queue into this approval request area. So as an admin, or you would potentially have approval requests, or as like a project manager, maybe you have your own card as well as card transactions that you would be approving, and they would live in 2 separate areas, kind of on 2 separate tabs of the home screen. And this is where we can actually, as an admin, come in and approve someone's, or I said as an approver, I should say, approve someone's transaction. So you can see here all of the information from the processing on the back end, the hotel.com here, or a fuel purchase, or Delta, or Amazon. We pull all of that kind of back end processing vendor information, as well as dollar figures, and even dates. We even pull spend details as well. So if it's a fuel purchase, we'll not only just let you know like, hey, this is Exxon, or whatever your local fuel station that you guys use is. We'll also pull spend details down here where we can actually see exactly what type of fuel it was, how many gallons there were, price per gallon, any discounts. Some of this fuel data can be used for IFTA reporting, so we can set up fuel-only cards as well as pull fuel data on cards. And then if it's like an Amazon purchase, we also pull like product codes, so you can see exactly what the product codes were and what it was purchased, and you guys can look those up. And people will use this information in accordance, as well as like the vendor information, the amounts and everything, to not only verify the coding that someone has submitted, but also verify that the receipts match all of that information as well. And you guys can make sure that what is being spent or submitted is actually, a legitimate business purchase. It gives you more visibility. And if that happens to not be a legitimate business purchase, you guys can then, per whatever your company policy is, recuperate that cost. I see most people will do some sort of like a miscellaneous deduction as well, attached to like an employee record. So you got some options, again, a lot of visibility there, but typical, process is, hey, this gets routed to an approver. Approver would verify coding. Most of the time they're approving it. Everything looks good. If they're rejecting it, I see like that's mainly because like this is like really out of whack and they just need to redo it. Maybe it doesn't have receipt, or maybe the receipt is bad, or they need to resubmit, or something of that nature. As an approver, they can also just change the coding. So if something is messed up with the coding, an approver could just simply change that information and simply approve it in the system as well. Other thing down here is if we do have missing receipts, I do like to point this out, and maybe I should have mentioned a little bit earlier, but if we do have lost receipts, we can default in and have the user sign a missing receipt affidavit, just certifying that it was a legitimate business expense, and you guys could have that in lieu of the receipt, unless it is, found at some point. Once the transaction has been through that initial process, so we've captured receipt, we've done coding, we've done approval processes, it will then be queued up and ready to push into foundation. For our hosted clients, this process is a little bit smoother than our server-based or on-prem clients. So right now, for our on-premise clients, you will have to export this data and import it via, the FSI import. We do have kind of further, development going on to make this a little bit more seamless, like it is for our hosted clients. But just note the processes are a little bit different between the two. I'm going to show what the process looks like for our hosted, client and the hosted environment. But just be aware of that. So when I get to the settings here, I opened it up for a large date range, and that's just because I have some data back here that I like to show off, because it has a couple of different types of statuses and where these transactions are at in the process. So when I look at these first 4 transactions, you'll notice that there is a status of locked. That means that those transactions have already been pushed into foundation. If I try to select those transactions, it will not let me select them. It's not going to let me duplicate the push and push those and duplicate those expenses in Foundation. The green transactions mean they're ready to go. That means the transaction has been approved, it's been coded, it's been, receipts have been captured and such. And I can simply select those and queue them up for push. Anything that shows up as yellow, that means I'm missing workflow options. I'm missing some sort of a receipt or coding or something of that nature. I can sort and filter all of these screens by user or by status, making it really easy to see exactly what is where in this process. I'm just going to show just, hey, instead of showing a single push, let's just go ahead and select everything. So you can push one or as many transactions as are needed, and we can push those into Foundation very easily. So to get them into Foundation, you just simply hit this push to Foundation hosted button, and you will sync or log into Foundation, and it syncs those transactions directly into the accounts payable area under enter invoices, and they come in as a prepaid credit card transaction. So not only did we, capture receipts, we did the coding, we did the approvals. We're really doing a front-end reconciliation here. So it's going to streamline, reconciliations at the end of the month with an easy posting, and we're getting rid of any manual entry for credit card transactions that would happen in the system, which is really, really nice. So all you have to simply do to finish out these transactions is go ahead and post those in the system. So I'll just go to my AP list, and we would go ahead and post those credit card transactions. They come in with the vendor, dates, amounts, card user, all of the coding that you guys entered and approved as well. Very simply added in here. Again, they do come in as a prepaid credit card transaction. And what that means is that when you go ahead to look at your list and post, and give me 1 second to pull this up, when we look at the GL posting, a prepaid credit card transaction post into the expense and it actually clears through the aging report. So it's not going to sit on your opening AP, and you'll be able to see it sitting in a liability account until you guys pay down that liability on the actual credit cards. And again, MasterCards that are issued through our software, typical credit, this isn't a pre-funded account or anything of that nature. So we do go through underwriting, submit credit application with proper documentation for corporate, and it is a corporate guarantee as well. So that's the posting. And then again, when you guys pay down the credit card balance, you would just clear that liability account off with some sort of a entry or GL or something of that nature. The transactions do come into Foundation. Now, you typically wouldn't open these up, but you definitely can. So if I go ahead and open this up to look at the transaction, you'll actually see that it comes in with all of that data that we just looked at. It also comes in with an image of the receipt attached to, and I see one of the questions coming in is, do receipts import to Foundation? Yes, they do. Images come into the document imaging module. So if you click on that transaction, it will open the image in document imaging. It's where you guys would be able to view and see that. You can go back out to Foundation Pay to find receipts, but they will also be listed and posted here attached to the transaction itself. And let's just say you guys were to run like a vendor inquiry or something of that nature. If you guys pulled like an accounts payable report and looked at vendors, or an AP aging, or I should really say like an AP history report or a job cost report, anything that has a receipt attached will show up as a little paperclip icon. So if you drill down into enough detail, you will go ahead and see a receipt if it is attached, and you'd be able to open that up for your guys' records at any time. So that is really the front to back of the corporate card and expense management solution. A couple other things I do like to mention here is you have really good visibility over this system as the month goes on. So you're no longer waiting till the end of the month to see exactly what transactions happen, matching out receipts, do coding, and then manually entering or importing those transactions into Foundation. I do typically see people pushing these transactions into Foundation weekly. And what that does is it, increases that velocity as which we can get expenses and job costing into the system, so that you guys have the most up-to-date and accurate job costing. And you get rid of that huge 4 to 6 week lag time. And I've seen it even extend a little bit further. I've talked to a couple clients that are like, yeah, we're actually about a month, 2 months behind on doing our credit card transactions. This should alleviate a lot of those problems because we're not manually entering, we're not manually, tracking down receipts and hounding people down. We have really good visibility. So you can actually come in here on a regular basis and pull your reports, and we can sort and filter by user. We can also sort and filter by action. So anything that shows up as red is missing a receipt or missing data or something of that nature. So really good visibility as the month goes on, and really easy to kind of follow. And you have control over this entire system. That's a couple other things just to kind of wrap up the corporate card is that, while we do support, train, and do everything in house for this product, you guys do have control. So it's like every time you want to order a card, you do not have to reach out to us. Or if you need to freeze a card, or you need to, order a new card, or order, start a new user or something of that nature, you do have the power to come in here and like freeze, close, reorder a card, change restrictions, up limits, change budgets, so on and so forth. But if you do need assistance with that, we do have the support team that would be available. We have a dedicated support team that would work on these types of calls. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to move forward and we're going to talk about the vendor payment. So under Foundation Pay, we're also releasing a vendor payment service or solution called Bill Pay. I'm going to take you through a quick demo. This is a newer piece of Foundation Pay that we're introducing here this month. And I'd like to just introduce it to you guys here, as well as just, since you guys seen the cards, because this is an additional add-on that would be very, very useful for a lot of people. So our bill pay system is actually completely integrated with Foundation here. And how it works is like right now, if your AP person or somebody wants to go in and make a payment in Foundation, they have to go into accounts payable and they have to go in and select invoices by date, and they go in and print a check out or reach out and see if the vendor, accepts a credit card, or reach out and get bank information so they can process like an ACH or upload or something of that nature. This process would be, a system where we can actually offload that responsibility from you to us, and we actually use the Corpay vendor network on the back end. So it gives you a single selection process. You just tell, instead of you guys going and sourcing all the different payments, you simply select the invoices you want to pay, and then we will reach out to the vendors, again, through Corpay, and pay those vendors on your guys' behalf. So it's really easy to come in here and make your selections. You simply come through, select the invoices you want to pay, and then just simply post those into the system. You do not have to then do any of that back end process. You do not have to worry about sending the check out, putting it in the mail, reaching out and uploading an ACH to your bank, or even reaching out and giving credit card information. So it kind of shields you guys from all of that additional work there. You simply post into Foundation, and then it pushes through and again connects to Corpay, and that vendor will be paid by, basically by you guys, but through Corpay. It's kind of the in between. Once the payment is posted within Foundation, it does sync out to the Foundation Pay bill pay section here, where we will actually see a scheduled payment. Once an hour, these payments sync over to Corpay, and then Corpay reaches out and pays the vendor. You fund, Corpay and us to pay those invoices, and then the funds are not distributed directly from your account. So there is a separation there. And why that's important is like if someone loses a check or if there's a stolen check, that shift and that liability shifts from you to us in Corpay to pay those invoices off. So if there ever is like a reissue that happens, or again a stolen check, Corpay and is the one that will make that right. They're our trusted partner. We've had Foundation clients using them for years and years and years. We are now just releasing this better integration to their vendor payment service, which a lot of our clients are really going to like. You have visibility over everything in here as well. So if, when the vendor does get paid, you will be able to see like an email remittance really easily in the system, where you'd be able to open that up and see exactly how they got paid. How that process works is if the vendor is already in Corpay's vendor network, they get paid via the preferred method. If they are not in Corpay's vendor network, Corpay will reach out and pay them via check, and then they will reach out and try to pay them via an ACH or virtual card, or get them to sign up on cheaper forms of payment. Checks take the longest and they're most expensive form of payment to a vendor. So we do see, especially nowadays, especially with the USPS seems like losing a lot of checks nowadays. A lot of people shifting towards taking electronic payment as a better form of payment rather than check. So you guys will have visibility there. You'll also have visibility over anything paid through the bill pay system under the reporting section in accounts payable, where you can run a bill pay status report. And you guys can run this report at any time and see exactly, how the vendor did get paid when it gets paid. So you can see that last one that I submitted is still scheduled. Everything above that looks like check or card or ACH or a mixture of those. The vendor has the power to pay, get paid via whatever method they would like. It'll be very apparent to them that they are getting paid through your company. So if we have Kilpatrick Construction, say that's my construction company, and I pay, the vendor would see the invoice information. It would be very apparent to them, even though they are getting paid through Corpay, that it was an invoice and payment that was coming from, your guys' company. So this does a couple of things. It streamlines the selection process, it streamlines the payment process and offloads all of those back-end responsibilities. It also streamlines reconciliation. So at the end of the month, when you do your typical reconciliation, every single payment and foundation that comes out is going to match up with a reconciliation. You're reconciling against multiple line items. The way we've developed this is because if you send over a batch that has a certain dollar amount, you reconcile against that batch because that's what actually hits your bank. So when you send a batch of payments out of Foundation to Corpay, you fund that with an automatic, ACH to pull the funds out, and then that's what gets reconciled at the end of the month is the statement balance or the batch balance. Which is really nice. So it cleans up reconciliation, reduce risk of fraud, streamlined payment process there. Not super, overly complex, but if it is something that you guys are interested in, you can add these pieces of foundation pay, separate from one another. So if you're like, hey, we really like the corporate card and the expense management, but we're not big on the bill pay, you guys can definitely add that, or vice versa, bill pay without the cards. And then if you did want to potentially add both, we can obviously add those at the same time as well. So 2 different options here under foundation pay. We do have some future products coming out. This is one of those products that we're most heavily involved or invested in, enhancing and upgrading because it is a newer product for us. So it will be evolving over the next, 12 to 18 months. We do have good roadmaps. We're taking feedback from a lot of clients. We're in a good space here. Last thing I do want to mention about the bill pay, another nice piece there is that we can offer rebates or cash back on virtual card payments run through the bill pay system as well, which is a nice plus too, because some people can actually end up getting cash back or rewards on the other end for bill pay functions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions now that we've walked through a demo and I do see some questions coming through. I'm going to try to get to as many of these questions as I can, but we're also going to go ahead and throw a poll up here on the screen, and then we'll get into all the questions in one moment. So go ahead and answer that poll that we throw up, and then again I'll jump in and start answering the questions that you guys have thrown in the chat. The question is just asking, would you like more information? So if you would like someone to reach out and try to get you a further demo, I will say there's certain questions where it's going to be better if I can just jump on the phone with you guys, take you through a more personalized chat, and kind of go through pricing and such. Another thing I do like to mention is we will be sending a recording of this webinar out after the call. So go ahead and again, throw some questions in the chat and then answer this poll, and then we'll get to those questions. First question, and the poll's still up, and I'm just going to start hitting these questions, is does the user have to code or can an admin code? You guys do have that flexibility. Initial user can code transactions in terms of the corporate card and expense management solution. But as someone with admin privileges or visibility, like maybe a project manager, you can go and code someone else's transaction if needed. Next question is, will the vendors populate out of the vendor section in Foundation? Yes, we default into those bucket vendors, but you do have the selection process. Now, if you go to a vendor that isn't in Foundation, you're trying to select them, there's a process where you would have to, get those entered into Foundation and sync them out before they would be available. Next one is, do the individual charges apply to jobs show individually by vendor name on the job history report? The answer is yes. We do post individual card transactions as prepaid credit card transactions, and they do come in as a batch, but they do post individually. And part of the reason that we do that is so that we can separate out and see receipts attached to those transactions as well. Have one question here. It says our corporate card is paid. It's just something about like how the corporate card gets paid off. So our corporate card and expense management solution, again, we do issue those MasterCards at the end of the pay period or the payment cycle. You do pay cards off with an auto ACH, and you pay those card balances in full. We unfortunately, as much as we'd love to be, we are not one of these multi-billion-dollar credit card corporations. So we can't extend huge credit floats, but so balances do have to be paid at full at the end of the cycle. Someone asked if it's locked, can I get a receipt later? Or can I add a receipt? Yes, as an admin, you can click in, you'll be able to see that. It does lock it to where we can't push multiple times. So if it's already been pushed to Foundation, you do get a receipt. We can go in after the fact and add it. In Foundation, we can attach receipt or in Foundation Pay, but it's not going to let you duplicate that import. Question here, do receipts import into Foundation? Yes, they do import for both our hosted and on-prem clients. For hosted clients, they do get attached with the document imaging module. For on-prem, they come in as a link that goes to a, back to Foundation Pay where they would be able to be viewed. Next question here is how to cost code / classes sync if there is no budget on the job. If there's no budget, they'll just be able to select from the available cost codes and classes. So if the budget is available, it limits those cost codes and classes down. But if there is no budget, they see all of the cost codes. And for some companies, that might be no cost codes where they just have like a general cost code. And for some companies, that could be a little bit larger. And maybe we need to start adding budgets to make for easier entry. But they would be able to select from the available things in that list and then import. Someone asked, will this eliminate the FSI import upload? I thought I heard something about that. So yes, our system, if you are hosted, syncs directly in with no need to export data to a CSV and then import into the system. But I will say, if you're on our on-prem client, our server, or if you're on-prem or server-based, you do still need to use the FSI importer. We're looking to try to get the newer update out to our on-premise clients within the next couple of months. How long does next question? Just kind of scrolling through here. How long does this typically take to implement for the cards or either product kind of side and like by themselves? It typically takes about a month if you did both of them, the corporate card and expense management as well as the bill pay. That time can take a little bit longer. You might be looking more like 6 to 8 weeks if you're doing both. Is there reporting or search functions? Yes, you can go in and search, past transactions, your own transactions in Foundation Pay or in Foundation. If you're in Foundation Pay, you can sort and filter by user. You can search by vendor name, by dollar amounts, by job. So there is reporting function and search capabilities in the system. Next question is what happens when an employee uses their card with a vendor that is not loaded in the system? It will swipe, it will run, that it'll work just like a typical credit card transaction. And then it would get halted before you can get push the transaction to Foundation. So you would need to maybe add the vendor or push in with a miscellaneous vendor if the vendor is not in the system. Oh, can we send automated reminders? Yeah, and I usually do mention this, but now that I'm thinking about it, I may not have. Any incomplete transactions that don't have coding or anything of that nature, we could set automated that I should say don't have receipts, don't have coding. We could set up automated notifications to go to those users, and we could send those on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. Someone, got some questions here on pricing and cost of the system. I do want to point out that, if there is specific questions on pricing or cost, we go ahead and, when you filled out that form, hopefully you put in there, would you like some more information, or you can email me directly here at dkilpatrick@foundationsoft.com, and we can kind of go back and forth on exact pricing because there are multiple pieces of the system and pricing can vary, especially with bill pay and things of that nature, based off of like processing volume, especially with bill pay. Does this have approval steps for AP invoices? So we do have some stuff coming out in the future for AP invoices where we will have an AP automation tool that uses AI and approval processes for the AP invoices and abilities to sync out, but not quite there yet. Our AP automation is slated to come out sometime in the early second quarter. Question here on divisions. Yes, we can have divisions, entered. I think there's a question on like sorting specific divisions or jobs based off of a user. I will say we do have that in our roadmap right now. So that, like, an example is like, hey, we have a heating and a plumbing division. We want to have heating employees only see heating jobs and plumbing employees just to see the plumbing jobs. That is not out right now. They'll see all active jobs. We are pretty close on getting that added into the system. Top of our roadmap at the moment in terms of what I would call an enhancement to the software. Is it possible to add bill pay independent from the other modules and pay? Yes. So there's going to be eventually 3 pieces of the system. You can add all 3 pieces individual or together if needed. Will an admin be able to use the app to cancel card or change limits, et cetera? Yes, admins can use the app and go into the settings and make those adjustments as needed. Once it's been approved and pushed to Foundation, can it be altered? Yes, you can change before posting in Foundation if you find that you import and there is a problem. Once it's posted, you have to go through normal reversal processes. Again, specific cost or pricing or anything of that nature, we'll have to take offline and see exactly what you guys are looking for, card users and such, to get you exact pricing. And like I said, if you want to contact me specifically, I can kind of go back and forth with you. You can email me here at dkilpatrick. Or if you responded to that poll as yes, you would like more information, one of my colleagues will get in touch with you as well. Question here is, if the receipts are not approved, does it take from their budget, or once it's approved? So the approval process in the system, open my question, just closed here. The approval process in the system is just verifying that the coding looks good and the receipts that are submitted look good before it can get pushed to Foundation. If we find that transaction should not have been run, that you guys would need to take steps to pull that back if needed. But it will flag and not allow for import until they are approved. Oh, does this eliminate the need for positive pay exports to the bank? So yeah, positive pay is a good question. So for the bill pay or the vendor payment services, one of the benefits as well, because you're not going to be the ones processing the checks or payments out of your own system, that's going to be going through Corpay, is that would get rid of the need to do positive pay for anything that you run through that system. Now, you still do have the power. You guys can still cut checks internally or process a credit card transaction or an ACH and pay off an invoice or anything of that nature. But anything that you run through the system, again, it's funded through Corpay, and then Corpay distributes the funds to the vendors and pays. So it would get rid of the positive pay. So most people have to do positive pay files. Typically, the bank will require them if there was ever a fraudulent check or anything on that process. So if you do have to cut checks and then upload positive pay files, that process does get removed. So easier reconciliation, less need for positive pay as well. But if you did process anything internally, you still would potentially need to do positive pay. Processes of pulling funds from the account when a vendor is paid, or even for ACH, or I should say the credit card, or paying off the credit card, is in automatic ACH. Are the credit cards provided by Foundation? So we partner with Corpay on the back end for our vendor payments or Comdata, as well as the corporate card and expense management solution. So for both bill pay and corporate card and expense management, we do use a third-party processor on the back end. Everything is supported and everything is done internally through Foundation. We're your liaisons there, but we do that, and they issue MasterCards in the system, so you would be able to issue those MasterCards through Foundation Pay through our partner. In terms of the credit cards, can vary depending on needs. There's a question there. Can you explain the process for the process? Sorry, let me pull into this question. Can you explain the process Foundation uses to pull vendor payment from our bank accounting system? So you guys have your vendor information inside of Foundation. When you go to make a payment on an invoice, you tell us which invoice you want to pay, and it shoots it off. Just with the basic information, we will reach out and pay that vendor. So if they, want to get paid via virtual card or ACH or check, Corpay will handle that. The payment that you guys provide to Corpay is an automatic ACH. So, hey, we chose 10 invoices. There were $20,000 worth of invoices. You then push a $20,000 payment to Corpay, and then Corpay again distributes from their account, which is really nice. Okay, and then here's a question: is do we retain reward points? So we do have rewards and cashback points available with certain things. And if you're talking about, hey, do we retain like our Capital One or American Express points? If we use a system, you do have to change corporate cards over to our corporate cards, so you don't have it doesn't have the same process there, and you guys would lose like your Capital One, cashback or rewards. Where again, we do have the ability to do cashback or rewards. They are not through Capital One. It is a different card. Someone, last question here: to confirm credit card transactions do need a vendor in order to code and approve. It will default the vendor for you. If you want to change that vendor to a different vendor in your system, you can do that. So a lot of people will process their credit card transactions into what I call a bucket vendor. If that's the process that you guys would be doing, you guys don't, it'll just go into that bucket vendor, which would be called Foundation Pay. It still has the vendor specific information, the receipt that pulls through. But if you guys wanted to change from that default Foundation Pay credit card vendor to one of your actual listed vendors, you do have the power to do that and can import either direction there. Okay, that looks like all the questions. If I did miss any of the questions, there was a lot kind of rolling through there. Again, feel free to email me here at dkilpatrick at foundationsoft.com. And like I said, if you want to follow up, if you submitted that poll and said, yes, you'd like more information, one of my colleagues will be reaching out to potentially schedule another call with me to kind of go over more details and do maybe a personalized call or chat on exactly how this would work for you. So again, I appreciate everybody jumping on here and hope everyone has a great rest of your day.